Hey there, ready to dive in? Today we're going to be exploring The Startup of You. It's a book that really makes you think differently about how we see our careers, especially in a world that just never stops changing, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it's written by Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn,
Oh, yeah?
and Ben Casnocha. They're basically saying we should look at our careers kind of like building a startup.
Or be like entrepreneurs.
Exactly, like
Instead
entrepreneurs.
of like climbing that old corporate ladder.
Yeah, because who
Huh.
even does that anymore? I mean,
Right. They're still around, but
they're around, but it's not like it used to be.
not at all.
It's not like the old days. Remember, like the American auto industry in Detroit? For decades, it was like nothing could touch them. General Motors was huge. They were actually the first company to ever earn $1 billion in revenue
Wow.
back in 1955.
$1 billion back then.
Mm.
It's going to be like a gazillion today.
I know. It's crazy.
But I guess they got a little too comfy, didn't adapt, and well,
Yeah. You know how that story ends.
it's a classic tale.
It is. And the startup of you actually uses that as a warning. It reminds us that just because you were successful in the past doesn't mean you always will be. You got to be able to adapt, especially with how the job market is today.
That's true. So how do we even do that, though? Are we supposed to just like reinvent ourselves every other day?
No, not quite. The book talks about this thing called a permanent beta mindset. Have you heard of that?
Permanent beta.
I don't think so. So it's like software. You know how software is always updating and getting better? Like
Yeah.
your phone always seems to have a new update for an app. It's like that. It's the idea that we should always be learning and growing and adapting instead of thinking, okay, I'm done. It's more like, how can I keep getting better?
So like we're always a work in progress.
Exactly. You got it. Always a work in progress.
Yeah.
And they use companies like Netflix as an example. Remember how they started with DVDs by mail?
Yeah.
And then they saw where things were going and made a big change to streaming.
Smart.
They're always evolving,
Yeah.
never standing still.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this permanent beta thing. It makes sense, but how do we actually use it in our own careers?
Yeah.
I mean, am I supposed to just constantly refresh my LinkedIn profile or something?
No, it's not really about refreshing anything. It's more about how you approach your whole career. The book breaks it down into three main areas: your assets, your aspirations and values, and then market realities.
So it's like a puzzle we have to figure out.
Yes,
Right.
exactly, like a career
Oh,
puzzle.
okay, I like that.
So first, your assets are kind of like your strengths, your experiences, what you bring to the table.
Mm.
Think about Larry Page and Sergey Brin. They use their computer science skills to build Google.
Right.
What are your superpowers?
My superpowers.
Yeah, what are you really good at?
I like that.
Okay.
But what about people who maybe don't have like a fancy degree or years of experience? What if you're just starting out?
That's a good question. But everyone has something to offer. It's about looking at your skills in a new way. Even if they're not the typical professional skills, maybe you're really good at organizing events, or you're amazing at graphic design. Those are valuable.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
It's about seeing your skills as valuable, even if they're not what you'd put on like a traditional resume.
exactly. And then the second piece of the puzzle is aspirations and values. This is all about figuring out what you really want in your career. What's important to you? Think of someone like Jack Dorsey, the co-founder of Twitter and Square. He's really passionate about simple and elegant design, and you can see that in everything his companies do. It's about finding that work that you're really passionate about.
Yeah.
Something that aligns with what you care about, not just chasing a paycheck or some fancy title.
Totally. I feel like that's how so many people end up in jobs they hate because they never really sat down and figured out what matters to them.
It's so true. And that actually brings us to the third piece of the puzzle: market realities. So this is where we think about what's going on in the job market. What skills are companies looking for? What industries are doing really well? It's kind of like doing market research, but for your own career.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Got to keep an eye on the prize, but also know what's happening around you.
exactly. You could be the best, what's something outdated? The best typewriter repair person in the world.
Okay. Yeah.
But if nobody uses typewriters anymore?
Yeah. Your skills aren't going to be in very high demand.
Not so much. So we've got our assets, our aspirations, and the market. Those are some big things to think about. But how do we actually use all this? Does the book give us like a practical plan?
Yeah, I was wondering that too. It'd be great to have some sort of strategy to put all this into action.
It does. It does. Remember how we were talking about adapting like a startup, being in that permanent beta mode? Well,
Right.
they actually suggest an ABZ framework for career planning.
ABZ.
Yeah.
Like ABC, but fancier.
Basically.
Yeah.
It means you have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan Z.
Okay. I'm listening. Tell me more.
All right, so plan A, that's your main plan, your current gig, what you're doing right now. But the key here is to be flexible. Be ready to adapt if you need to just like remember those Netflix folks.
Ooh, right, okay.
Yeah.
So like PayPal, didn't they start out with some plan to be on Palm Pilots?
Exactly. They were all about mobile payments on Palm Pilots. Can you imagine?
Talk about a niche market.
I know, right? But the thing is, they paid attention to how people were actually using their product. Turns out everyone was using it on eBay.
Smart.
So they switched gears, pivoted to online payments, and, well, the rest is history.
Well, good for them. Okay, so be ready to adapt your plan A. Got it. What about plan B?
Plan B is like your backup plan, your pivot. Ideally, it's something that's kind of related to what you're already doing so you can use your existing skills. Think about Sheryl Sandberg. Have you heard of her?
Oh, yeah.
She's made some big career jumps from the World Bank to Google to Facebook.
That's quite a resume.
Right. But each move made sense. It was a strategic pivot. She was building on her experience, not just starting over from scratch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I see. So you're always kind of moving forward,
Yeah.
even when you're switching directions.
Exactly. And then finally, we have Plan Z. This is like your safety net, your just-in-case plan.
Just in case what?
Just in case something unexpected happens. Like, what if you get laid off, or you have a sudden family emergency, or you just wake up one day and decide to join the circus?
Okay.
You know? It's for those big life curveballs. You might never need it, but it's good to have that peace of mind, just in case.
That's true. I like it. So ABC planning, having options is never a bad thing.
Yeah.
But this book, The Startup of You, it's not just about planning by yourself, right? It also talks about this idea of IWE. What's that all about?
IWE, that's all about the power of connection. It's the idea that building a strong network is crucial for your career, but not in a superficial way, like just collecting business cards at a networking event. It's about real relationships.
So you're saying ditch those awkward networking events.
Well, I wouldn't say douche them entirely. But yeah, it's about going beyond the surface level. It's about building genuine connections where you're really trying to help each other out. Think about the people you're closest to, your friends, your mentors, your colleagues. They've got your back, right?
Yeah.
And then there are those weaker ties that the book talks about, like
Okay.
people you might meet at a conference or connect with online.
Mm-hmm.
Those connections can be really valuable too. They can open up all these new doors and give you different perspectives that you might not get from your inner circle.
It makes you think of that saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
It's true to an extent, but it's kind of both, isn't it? Your network, it's like this amazing source of information and advice that you can tap into.
Yeah, it's like having your own personal panel of experts.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
say you need some advice on a new marketing strategy.
Mm-hmm.
You could spend hours Googling it. Or you could just call up your friend who works at that hot new agency.
Right, much easier.
And often you'll get better insights from a conversation anyway. That's something the Startup of You really emphasizes. Sometimes the best information comes from actually talking to people, not just reading articles online.
I can definitely see that. So we've talked about having the right mindset, building a strong network. But there's one more thing we got to talk about, the hustle factor.
Yes, the hustle. Because you can have all the plans and connections in the world, but if you're not willing to put in the work, nothing's going to happen. The authors call it developing your hustle muscle.
I love that. So
Yeah.
it's about being proactive, resourceful,
Yeah.
a little bit scrappy.
Exactly. They tell this great story about the Airbnb founders. Did you hear about this?
I don't think so. What do they do?
So they were really close to going broke, like on the verge of giving up.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was rough. But instead of giving up, they decided to get creative. They started selling boxes of cereal to make ends meet.
Wait, what, cereal? Like breakfast cereal?
Yep, they designed these special boxes with Obama and McCain on them during the 2008 election.
That's hilarious.
It was brilliant, pure hustle, and it worked. They made enough money to keep their business afloat.
Wow. That's an amazing story. I love that. It just goes to show you never know where a little hustle will take you.
Exactly, you just got to be willing to try new things and put yourself out there.
So to wrap things up, The Startup of You.
Hmm.
It's a really inspiring read. It gives you all these practical tips and real-world examples that you can use to build a career you love.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway is that we have more control over our careers than we realize. We don't have to just wait for opportunities to come to us. We can create our own.
Absolutely. It's all about being proactive, adaptable, and always learning and growing. Which reminds me, what would you say your unique selling proposition is?
That way.
Your unique selling proposition. You know, if your career was a startup, what's your specialty? What sets you apart?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to have to think about that. It's something to think about. And for everyone listening, what would your unique selling proposition be? What value do you bring to the table? What makes you stand out from the crowd? Keep that in mind as you're building your own startup of you.
It's all about figuring out your strengths and using them to your advantage.
Yeah.
And remember, it's an ongoing process. You're never really done. You're always evolving.
Exactly. Be adaptable, be resourceful, and never underestimate the power of your network. With the right mindset and a bit of hustle, you can achieve some pretty amazing things.